Hi guys, welcome to Life is for the Living. Today I want to give you, part of my story. I'm saying part because that's not the whole of it, and then I'll be giving you, more stories so that you can just get to know me, and then you can also try to, relate if at all probably you went through the same. And also, if your upbringing was any different, probably, let me know in the comment section. Okay, remember to subscribe, comment, like, and share. Now, before I begin the story, I want to give a shout out to one of our subscribers. Today's shout out goes to a lady by the name Jane Onimbo. Jen, thank you so much for being such a supporter in all my, my social media platforms. Yeah, thank you for subscribing and sharing and even DMing me just to encourage me. So if you wanna be like Jen, kindly leave a comment below and I'll give you a shout out in my next vlog. Now, there are things that maybe looking back I didn't like I couldn't comprehend why they were happening the way they did, but then right now somehow I tend to think they make sense, but I don't know. I'll let you be the judge. Now, growing up, I don't have much recollection of my life before, let's say, 9 years, before I got to 9 years. Like, why is that? Because probably I don't have, there are no baby photos of me. Like, of course, I knew I existed back then. I just have, like, a little bit of memories here and there, very tiny that I can piece together. But I can remember, very well from maybe around, when I was 9 years. And how, what makes me remember this year? Now, this is how it all began. My dad was a civil servant. Of course, right now he's retired. Now he was transferred from one town and then went to another. I remember when began my schooling, I started in the village, so that was up to around 8 years. From I grew up from 0 to 8 years. Now I remember on my ninth year, my dad came, and then took me, and then my sister, one of my sisters. I come from a big family. One of my sisters, and then took us with him to a place where he had been transferred. So actually, we were going to do our schooling from there. So somehow I was happy, leaving the village. But then again, as a small village girl, like a town, it wasn't like a big city. But then also just moving to another place, of course, it can be very scary. But all in all, my dad came and took us. It was during the holidays. We had just closed school, so I just finished my class 2. I think that's the equivalent of grade 2, and now I was in the coming year I was supposed to go to class 3. So my dad took us. It was during the holidays, and then went with us. Of course, for those who are in Kenya, we went to Rift Valley. Okay, that was a province by then, but now it's called Nakuru County, at a place called NYS, National Youth Service. That's where my dad used to work. So my sister and I, we went there. We traveled. We went with my dad, and then it was a new place, exciting, and it's during the holidays. We didn't have friends, so we would just play with each other. And then I remember just before the schools opened, my dad just took us around because we were staying in the youth service camp. So we went around. Then he told us, he showed us, like, this is the school you're going to be studying in. So just like that. Now, of course, now the day of opening the school came. So I remember that day because during the holidays, my dad got the uniforms and everything that we needed. So on that day that we were supposed to go to school, I remember my dad woke us up in the morning and they're like, get ready for school. So we were ready, and then we were just waiting for him. Remember, I was going to class 3, my sister was going to class 4, so we were like really pretty young. I was 9 by then. So we're done, like we've taken breakfast, so we're just standing waiting for my dad. So my dad looked at us and like, what are you guys waiting for? Go to school. Now we looked at him like, okay. And my dad he's like a law unto himself. So when he says that, you actually go to school. So he just told us, go to school and tell the headmaster I'll be coming later. Now remember, we are new in that, that area, because I think we just spent like 2 weeks before, schools open. And then we don't even know who the headmaster is. Yeah, we have an idea of where the school is, but then of think of you as a 9-year old, or for those who have kids who are that young, or that old. Think of you sending your kids to school and telling them, it's a new school, go and tell the teacher that I'll be coming. Anyway, we walked slowly and then we got there. So I remember we got there, we walked around, until we found the headmaster's office. Of course, it wasn't very hard to spot because, there was something that was written, a label, this is the headmaster's office. So we actually stood there. We didn't even know, like, going in, what are we going to tell the headmaster? And we can't go direct to class because we don't even know where the classes are. So we just stood out there, and then the headmaster happened to be, passing by. Then he looked at us and asked, like, who we were. And then, we just, said our names. And then he said, our dad told us to come. He will be coming later. So, like, okay, at least he was kind enough. So he showed us somewhere to sit. And then, back then there were no phones. So there's no way you could call, the parent and ask, like, So we sat there, and then, like, almost 1.5 hours later, my dad came, spoke to the headmaster. And then, of course, we were told, okay, after that, we were told, okay, you've been admitted, go to class. We don't even know where class is. Anyway, again, the way we figured out, like, where, but then, anyway, the school wasn't so big because the school had just, it was just like a new school. So the highest class was class 4, and then I was to go to class 3. So my sister was in class 4, class 3. So we just went, and then also we went around looking, and then we just found, it was written class 3. So you're there, the teacher's in class. You know how afraid you can be in primary. I don't know whether it was just me, but as a pupil, so you knew, you don't even know where you're going to sit, but then you just told, go to class. So we went, stood out there, and then there was a teacher who happened to be passing by, and then, somehow we just knocked the door, and then, I was ushered into class, and then, so that is like one part of, the story that kept me thinking over the years, like, would I be comfortable sending my 9-year-old kid, just to school? I don't know. My dad probably had his own reasons, and then also back then, I don't know if it was just like maybe, like growing up, in those years. I don't know whether parents were just trying to do natural selection so that for those who can survive, or I'm not so sure. But then anyway, that's how my first day in school, in a strange, a new school, a strange place, no friends, no nothing. That's how it began. All right, fast forward, of course, we made friends and everything, and then I was done with, primary. And then by the time we're doing, finishing the primary, my dad took an early retirement, so we're going again back to the village. Now, remember the time I told you, like, when my dad took us when I was 9 years, and then we never went back to the village the entire time until I finished, my primary education. So again, going back to the village, again, the place looked new because it had been years. And then even the friends that I had, most of them had grown up, some of them had moved. So you're going back to the village, you even have like language challenges, But then again, we had to, so that's where we were supposed to go to, like those sites so that we can join high school. Because my dad said he can't like let us join high school. What happens like, like where you choose where you do your exam, in most cases, this high school that you get is just maybe around in the same district or same province where you did your, unless you're going to maybe a national school where you'd go maybe to a further, school, I mean, that was education back then. For those who studied back then, how things used to go. So we had to go back at the village, and then dad had to look for, schools back there. So I remember again, I was supposed to go to Form 1. My dad did bought whatever that I was supposed to carry to school, because my Form 1 and Form 2, I went to boarding school, and then Form 3 and Form 4, I went to a day school. So I remember the first day in boarding school, again, it was the same. My dad was like, okay, carried, and then, there were these metal boxes that you pack your things, and then you carry. So my dad was like, okay, take your metal box, and then just go ahead, I'll follow you. So I went, and then at the gate, of course, I would not be admitted at school until the parent was there. So My dad came, I had to wait there. Again, there were no phones. My dad came. I was admitted, you know. Now, that was the second time again, me taking myself to school. All right. After 2 years, like my sister and I were, this now sister was in the same school. Like when I was in Form 1, my sister was in Form 2. So again, there was an issue with school fees because we're like many kids. Like I come from a big family. So like were so many who were still in school. So like among other things, like okay, my dad opted like okay, go to a day school. Now the day school that I went to, there was a day school that was just like a half a kilometer from my home. Now the rural, the village. So I went there. I started schooling. I went there for almost 2 weeks, but then there wasn't much learning going on in that school. So I went and told my dad like I don't think like I can make it in this school. So my dad told me like the other nearest school, like the other alternative was like really far. So I told my dad like maybe we can give it a try. Okay, I didn't even know what I was talking about until so after 2 weeks I was taken to another school. So when I went to that school was like 12 kilometers away. Now back then okay, let's just say I had to be doing 24 kilometers a day, like 12 to and 12 from school on a daily for 2 years. Now, that was a challenge that I didn't even know I would just make it or something. But then, since I'm the one who told my dad that this other school, the nearer one, which was like a half a kilometer away, like I didn't see much learning going on there. I mean, I just had to, that was the other only option I had. So like schooling started like I was in Form 3. Form 3 and Form 4, I went to that school. It wasn't easy. Like I had to be leaving my house, like around either 3:45 in the morning or latest by 4, so that I can be able to walk. Like anytime I leave later than that, like if you'd leave at 5 or anything after that, like you either have to be just running all the way. Because again, if you get to school late, you'll be punished. The teacher doesn't want to know where you're coming from. So like I had to. So it used to be very dark in the morning by the time I would leave home. By the time like it gets to morning, morning will just find me somewhere along the way. By the time I get to school because we're supposed to be at school by I think 6:30. Yeah. So Form 3 and Form 4 used to go very early. So by 6:30, so that's why I had to leave like around 4 in the morning, so that like I'd have like an hour, like 2 hours, or at least 1.5 hours to do the trekking to school. So I went. The first days were really difficult, but then with time you just adjust. You're like there's this thing that in your mind you get used to a certain thing. Once your mind has conceived like that's your new normal, like you kind of adjust. So with time, it was just normal. I'd wake up in the morning and go, and then come back in the evening. And then by then my mom wasn't there. Okay, don't want to talk about it, but then okay, she is back there now. But then that time it was just my dad and us. And then my dad decided again to leave to go to go back to the capital city. So I stayed in the village with my siblings. They were younger than me. So it was like I would have to wake up in the morning, make sure they organize, like they will be okay going to school, because then they used to go to this school, the primary section of the school that I rejected, the high school. So I would make sure that probably they had something for breakfast, like just make sure I leave everything prepared, and then I leave, because by the time I would go, they would still be sleeping, because that was like too early for them. So I would do that, and then in the evening I had to like come back and make sure like you have to come and prepare meals for them because they were young. And then back in the village, it's not like the kind of life that we live nowadays, like you'd have like a gas cooker or an electric. No, we used to cook using wood. So you have to come back, go look for firewood, go to the farm and get vegetables or whatever food that you're cooking for that day, and then you prepare the food and then have a supper and then eat, and then it just the cycle continued. Now at some point, like, did I ever think of giving up? At some point, yes, I did. But then, now there's one thing that happened that made me told myself that giving up wasn't an option. Now, remember I had come from, the primary, I was in another town. So I came back the village, and there was a problem. I didn't like, I could understand the language, like when people spoke to me, but I couldn't reply, or speak it like nicely. So every time you would talk, someone would either laugh, or they would think like it used to sound funny, but then I would understand, and then but I would reply either in English or Swahili. Now I remember there was a cousin of mine. I don't know if he's a subscriber. Probably he'd see this if he knows himself. Like, I remember one day I was just coming from school, and then I met my cousin on the way, and then so we just exchanged greetings, and then as I was walking, he was like behind me and was talking to somebody. So the person he was talking to was like my former teacher, like when I was in nursery school. So like, I remembered the face of the teacher, but then of course we didn't have much because I didn't remember a lot about. So the teacher spoke to my cousin, of course, in my mother tongue. So they were like, so the teacher, they were talking about me. So the teacher was like, why have they decided to bring this girl back to the village? She will not finish school because most girls don't finish. Most girls just get pregnant and all that kind of thing. So I was like, but my cousin was, I mean, comfortable just talking about it. And then the cousin was like, yeah, we know she will not finish. That is something that sunk in me. This is a family member who even actually, like, if that's how he thought of me, so I told myself, like, even the thought that I had that I would not finish school, I told myself, if I had a reason to finish school, that would be it. Just to prove them wrong. So now I would wake up early in the morning, like, every day, like, I would try to make sure that I'm not even absent, so that it doesn't even give them, the idea, like, of already she's starting to give up. She didn't go to school today. So I would go to school on a daily. I remember when I was in my Form 4, now the last year, there's a time, it was the year of El Nino. There was a lot of rain. So it would rain like the entire day, the entire night, non-stop. So, and I only had one pair of uniform. So I would like go to school. You wear your uniform. By the time you go to school, you're soaking wet. So you try to wring your clothes so that they can just get rid of excess water, and then you will see it. Of course, during the day, the clothes will dry on you anyway, and then again in the evening, back in the rain. You reach home, again your clothes are wet, and the uniform was just one. So that's how life was. So I remember my, I told you my dad had moved, to the city. One day he came back home, and then he saw like what I was going through. So, like, I'll just wake up, it's raining, and I didn't have an umbrella. And actually, even if I had an umbrella, that kind of rain, for those who know El Nino, how it falls, like, even an umbrella would not even help. And sometimes you find that, like, these storms that are like windy, so it would just break your umbrella anyway. But I didn't have it. So I remember my dad one day, I just got up, I'd gotten up, preparing to go to school. So he called me. He had me moving, around the house. So from his room, he called. So I wondered, like, what, I didn't know what he wanted. So I went. Then he told me, like, why can't you, today, just for one day, just stay at home? This rain will kill you. All right. Now, remember, I had so many people I was trying, I had people to prove wrong. But then, and then there was this thing, like, of course, missing school. Like, our parents back then, even if, let's say, you're sick, you'd go to school probably until the teacher maybe sends you back home or something. But then I don't know what went through his mind for him just to call me and tell me, like, and it was in the morning. So, like, I just woken up, my usual duties, chores to go to school. So I thought about it. I was like, maybe this is my ticket just to not go to school. Like, definitely it's my dad saying. But anyway, that day I ended up going to school. So I told him, no, let me just go. Because now this is something that I didn't remember what I'd answered him that day. But then years later is when my dad reminded me. After I'd finished school, and he was actually telling the story to someone else. That's when because I wasn't paying much attention to things that were happening back then. I was like trying to just get over, school and stuff. So my dad said, I told him, which was true because the El Nino thing went on for almost like 2 months, I think. So I told my dad, like, even if I don't go today, it's still gonna rain tomorrow. So what difference is it gonna make? So that's how I answered my dad, and my dad said okay, and I went to school. So I didn't know he even, like, kept that answer with him for years. So it's something that he came telling somebody else, and and it's true anyway. Even if I would not have gone to school that day, the following day, what would have happened? It would still just have rained. So I just told myself, anyway, let me go, because there's no condition that is permanent in this life. And every day I went to school, literally, I just used to look at the calendar. I would literally cross out days, like, this day is gone, this day is gone, this month is gone. No, until I finished my high school. So when I finished high school, I was like, yeah, at least for those who thought I wouldn't finish, I did finish. So when I finished, and I remember, actually, it's a norm in the village. Most girls, like, not many girls who do that distance alone, and it was early, and there was a lot of obstacles. Like, I would wake up in the morning, like, it's in the village, and by then we had a lot of, there was so many sugarcane plantations that I would go through, and there was a lot of stories that you'd hear. But I remember one day, I think it was I was in Form 4, like the first term. One day I came home, and so I just remember, like, my grandma asked whether I had, had some, like, there was a talk in the village. So my grandma asked, like, whether I had met anything funny when I was going to school in the morning, or so I told her, no, there's nothing that I met. So I was told, actually, around 3 in the morning, there was, like, I think it was a leopard or something that had killed, some sheep around the village. And and most of the leopards and those wild animals, the wild dogs, whatever, they used to hide in the plantations. So I think the story, when they woke up in the morning, that is because, remember, I used to live around 4 or quarter to 4 in the morning, so it was like really dark and people were asleep. So by the time they were getting the stories of what had happened at night in the village, I had already left. So, and of course, there's no way they would have called. There were no phones back then to know whether I reached school safely, or whether, so it was just that thing of, waiting. So when I came in the evening, and, people were just, like, happy to see me, I was like, I don't know why are people happy, because those stories, me, I had not had them because I was at school. So when I came, that's when I was hearing now what had happened. That, there was a leopard that was spotted, and it had killed several, and then I'm like, so even according to them, they thought probably that morning, maybe I encountered it, maybe I was dead, maybe I'd been dragged inside the sugarcane plantation, whatever. But then I tend to think, like, that's when I actually, during those times, that's when I really believe that, God does exist, and He takes care of people, because there's so much that used to happen, so many stories, and there would be discouraging stories. Like, that alone would give you a reason either to stop schooling or go to school late, or everything. But then I was like, since it didn't catch me, like, that's it. So I would go. I remember that week, the week that followed, the leopard attack in the village. I was, like, kind of afraid. Like, I would, in the morning, like, especially when it's dark, either in the morning or at night, sometimes when you're walking in the dark, you tend to either imagine things. Like, sometimes you bend, you imagine, like, there's something bending in front of you, like a tree. Or, there's just these things that when you look into the dark, when it's pitch black, you start imagining figures. So, that week I was really afraid. Like, I would go, but then, like, it wasn't like, but then after some time, again, I got used to it, like, that's my fate. Like, whatever happens, happens. But then nothing happened, and here I am. So you remember, now that was my high school. So, and then these are just things that were happening, and then I told myself, like, I used to look at the conditions I used to live, and then, the circumstances and everything surrounding me. I used to tell myself, there is no way I'm gonna go through this kind of life and just end up a nobody. And actually, when I was talking about a nobody, I just used to tell myself, there is no way I'm just going to go through all this schooling and then just end up, let's say, getting married in the village and then just having babies, or like someone who never even went to school. So I told myself, this school has to yield something. I remember I told, on the last day when I did my final exam, after all the walks and everything, I remember there's one of my teachers, I was just, like, bidding them by. Then I told my teachers, like, the walking that I've done, the next time you see me coming to this school, I swear I'll be driving. You know those things you just saying, but then you're like, you're just finishing school. I come from a humble background. I mean, I was just telling myself like, it has to yield something. Anyway, fast forward like a couple of years later, I went back to visit my teachers, and actually, I was driving my fast car. So, anyway, that I'm saying there is power in manifestation. What you say, what you believe, what you work towards, it really ties up. So, there's, sometimes the roads are not like really smooth. And like when I look at the way I grew up, and when I look at the way, like kids are growing up nowadays, it's really different. Definitely, like, of course, I will not even let my kid go through this. But then, whatever I went through, it kind of gave me the inspiration. It gave me the drive. Like, there is no way I just wanted like my story to end in that village story. Like, look at her. And I also wanted to encourage somebody that you can do it. You can walk the distance. You can become somebody. I remember there's a girl like she used to, okay, she didn't, her home wasn't very far away from my home. It was like maybe a 10 minutes walk. So what happened, like I would leave my home, and then I would walk for around 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll pass by her home, and then we would go together to school. So I remember like the form 3, I went all by myself, because by then she was still finishing her primary. And then when I was in form 4, that's when she was in form 1. So I would like pass by her. At least now I had some sort of company, like after 10 minutes, I always know like I'll reach her home, and then at least we will be 2 of us. So that happened like in form 4. I used to like leave my home, pass by her place, like, and then we would go together. The day I finished my form 4, that is the day the girl stopped going to school. That's why I keep saying sometimes so I came to realize like she actually used to go, because I used to, I didn't think she would manage, like I think the journey, she just couldn't do the journey by herself. I mean, she had her other reasons, but then that was the end, so she just stopped going to school by the end of form 1, when I was finishing my high school. So of course I left, I finished high school, I went to the city, and then me with the still, with the fighting spirit, I joined, a college. So I remember there's this college, there are actually, this again ties down to, remember my career video. I remember my aspirations was, I like accounting, just counting money and stuff. And I was, with the accounting, being an accountant, it's something that I used to look at it this way. Like, I wanted a career that can guarantee me a job anywhere. So you see, when you take accounting, every organization, people get paid. So there's always some sort of accounting. So that's why I started, doing my accounting first. Now, after like a year, my dad saw an advert on the newspaper. Now there was it's called the Kenya Water Institute, had advertised intake for like students. So my dad came with a cutout and said, you have to apply. I didn't know why. Anyway, I applied. I was taken on the day of going to college. And I remember that college was a boarding college. Like, we would stay there and then only go back to during holidays. But there wasn't enough money for me to board. So my dad said, there is no way like I can afford boarding. So like I had to like, so I went to school. I remember again, my dad never admitted me to that college. I went, on the day of when I was supposed to report. I was asked where my parent was. I said my parent wasn't feeling well. That's how I got admitted. I went, I admitted. And then, so when they were telling me, like, now you have to go to, the boarding section, there is, the matron will show you the rooms. I'm like, I can't afford to become a boarder because I don't have enough fees. So I want to become a day scholar. Now, in the history, I think I'm the one who opened that window for that school, because in their history, there was no day scholar prior to me joining the school. So I told them, like, I can't. I don't have money, so there's no way I can board, or I can afford boarding fees. So I was told, anyway, they will discuss, and then they will let me know if actually they will accept my admission or not. So I went back home. The following day, I was told to come the following day. So I went, and then they told me, okay, the school had accepted. So I was the first day scholar So there's got like every other person who used to stay at school. I'm the only person who used to, go like after school hours. I would go home and then come back. And that's how I started that college. And some of my subscribers here actually and active commenters, people who leave comments, are people who are my classmates. So now another thing, remember I went and got admitted. Then I went to class. When I went to class, there were only boys in the class. I was the only girl in that class. To some, I even actually, so I kept thinking that maybe there are some girls who are, admitted and they haven't reported yet. So the first week, second week, no girl is showing up. Like there were different courses, but the course that I had applied for, I was the only girl in that class for 3 years. So like I had to study for 3 years in a class of only boys. Right. So like if I would be absent, then like 100% of the girls in the class would be absent, and that's how life was. So, and that's how like again I became strong. Like I'm facing boys, so I had like there was no option. So I just like whenever I would have stories and stuff in the class, I just used to be like one of them. I just used to be like a boy because like there were like some girls, but then they were admitted in a different course. Again, they are my subscribers here. I think 2 of them are here. So, but in their class, I think there were like 5 girls, which was a different course. But my class, I was the only girl. So for 3 years, I never gave up, went through school, finished. So when I look at now, and that's why I said this is part 1 of my story. So when I look back at all these events, I mean, they kind of tie down to like the kind of strength I have today, the kind of person I am today. Like, I came to resolve that I just got me to survive. I got just me to depend on. So, like, this is something I just want to encourage someone out there that no matter what you're going through, nothing is permanent, and you just have to have the drive, just believe in yourself that better days are yet to come. And and I think right now I'm in a much better position because I never gave up. So this I'm trying just to leave it out there, so that one, you get to know my story, because for sure I know some of you looking at me, you never think that like probably that's what I've been through. And I'm so sure maybe there are people here who've had it worse than I've had, or maybe it's better. Maybe in the comment section you can let me know. But then I'm not looking at the situation in a bitter way. I'm just looking at it like maybe if it was any easier than that, I wouldn't be where I am. I don't know. Maybe it would have been better. But then the thing is, I look at where I am right now. Do I have any regrets? No, I don't. So anyway, that's me, and that's the story for today. Let me know what you think. Well, until next time, my subscribers, bye bye.